If your husband says things like, "You're too sensitive," or "That never happened," and it's driving you crazy and making you feel really, really confused and gaslit, then you need to watch this video now. See, the way a narcissist communicates is different to regular arguments. They use specific phrases that are really designed to create doubt within yourself, to make you feel guilty, to make it feel like it's all your fault. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to explain to you 5 speech patterns that reveal narcissistic behavior. More importantly, I'm going to give you some specific language that you can use to be able to handle yourself in the best possible way when you're dealing with this sort of narcissistic behavior. I'm also going to give you a 7-day plan that you can begin to utilize right now that can not only help you from a communication perspective with him, but also to help to heal yourself and really establish that solid grounding within yourself. It's going to help you to regain that confidence, to really boost your self-esteem and self-worth. Now, pattern number 1 is blame shifting. And when he says something like, "This is all your fault," or "You made me do this," what he's attempting to do is try and make it entirely your fault, to shift the blame from himself onto you and effectively make you feel guilty and responsible for his bad behavior. Now, your response in this situation needs to be something like, "I understand you feel this way, but I'm only responsible for my behaviors and not yours." See, this works because it calmly sets a boundary without actually establishing a fight. You're actually essentially saying, "I'm responsible for the things that I've done, but I can't be responsible for how you feel about those things." And while saying this, remind yourself of this point: I don't deserve blame for his choices. And that can just help you to stay more grounded and centered. Because the challenge is when you're dealing with a narcissist is that their behaviors have a massive impact on you as an individual, because it's wobbling your foundation. Now, pattern number 2, gaslighting. Now, when he's saying "that never happened," or "you're remembering it all wrong," what often happens is it's going to make you feel a little bit crazy and make you feel like, did I remember it wrong? Is there something wrong with my memory? And you start questioning what's actually going on in your mind. This is a classic technique from a narcissist. Now, whilst he says something like this, you can respond by saying, "Look, I understand that's your view, and thanks for sharing that. My memory is a little bit different on this, and it's totally valid as well, because that was my experience." Now, once again, you're establishing a boundary. You're not trying to provoke him in any particular way, but at the same time, by saying this, what you're actually doing is saying that you are valid and your opinions count, and that what your memory is absolutely valid. And whilst you're saying this, you need to also remind yourself, I trust my experience and my memory, and that is perfectly valid. Now, the thing with dealing with narcissistic individuals is that in order to actually move forward from it, you have to really establish a really strong foundation. Narcissists thrive with basically projecting their own insecurities onto someone who has a low sense of worth, a low sense of self, and so on. So they'll be quite calculated with who they'll actually end up with. And part of this work is actually about elevating you, because I will be really honest with you, a lot of the times when we're dealing with narcissistic individuals, then the best course of action is to get out. They are extremely toxic. They can be very, very challenging to deal with. And sometimes it's about just saying, "Look, I'm going to cut my losses here and call it a day with this person." That requires strength, that requires courage, and what we're doing is building that up. Now, yes, sometimes they can change. In my experience, it's not often, but it has happened in the past as well. So we want to be really mindful of that, but this is about elevating you. Because what I want for you is to make sure that you have the healthiest self-esteem and self-worth that you possibly can. Because when you have that as your foundation, wonderful things can start to happen, and you set a boundary with that individual, with them knowing that they can't get away with their tactics and their techniques. Pattern number 3, playing the victim. When he says, "After all the things I've done for you," or "Nobody understands the sort of things I do for this family," it often makes you feel guilty and make you feel like you owe him something. So a way to respond to him in this situation would be something like this: "Look, hon, I appreciate all the things that you do for this family. I really do. You've been incredible with this and this and this. So thank you so much for that. But that doesn't excuse this behavior." Now, I'm shortening this down a little bit, but essentially what's happening here is that you're acknowledging where he's at, but you're not accepting the guilt. And that's an important boundary to set here. And while you're saying this, essentially what you also need to be reminding yourself of is, good deeds don't buy the right to hurt me. Once again, you're reinforcing to yourself, you don't deserve this kind of treatment, and you're setting a bit of a stake in the ground to say, nah, not happening anymore. Pattern number 4, put downs. When he says, "Look, you're not smart enough to understand this," or "You're just being way too dramatic," this ultimately makes you feel small, and that your opinions and feelings don't matter. And so in this situation, you might say something, look, I understand you feel this way, but I don't appreciate the way you're speaking to me in that particular way. And what you're doing here is you're being firm with the communication, you're acknowledging his opinions in those moments, but once again, you're setting a boundary around what you're willing to communicate. I will say with all of this, if you're dealing with someone who's, getting physically aggressive or anything like that, you need to make sure you're calling 911 or whatever the emergency number is in your particular country. So I just want to say that there, because sometimes individuals can be really, really aggressive and we want to avoid that. And I can understand that in some instances, what I'm saying here could potentially be a little bit inflammatory to the other individual because of the patterns that have been established over a number of years. So I want you to exercise some caution here based on how past experiences have gone. And if you're genuinely fearing your own physical safety, then you need to make sure you're calling the appropriate authorities or protecting yourself in advance. So I just wanted to say that. But if it's not to that extent and it's more around the emotional side of things, then once again, really elevating your own sense of self and putting a stake in the ground is extremely important here. And whilst you make this point, you're actually reminding yourself and saying, what I think and what I feel is important and it matters. So setting a boundary on this one is really, really important. Pattern 5, silent treatment. When he gives you the cold shoulder or acts like you don't even exist, this often makes you probably panic and make you want to try and fix the problem. That is the exact intent behind that behavior. Rather than doing that, don't chase. Go about your normal activities and continue to grow and heal you, because it's not so much the behavior that needs to change in terms of what that person is doing. It's about our response to that behavior. And I say that because a lot of the times the only thing that we can actually control is our own internal self. And it's more the response. So if you're noticing that when he, gives you the cold shoulder or he acts like you don't exist, and then that sends you into survival mode and you find yourself acting in some of these ways that I've just explained, then what that's doing is it's bringing up some internal wounds inside of you that need to be addressed. And once you heal those and you recognize you're not going to buy into that dynamic that he's actually initiating, and that you are secure enough within yourself and you have a strong enough foundation that you're not going to react to it, that's when you start winning the game. The other thing is that you're not rewarding that manipulative behavior either. And so whilst you're doing this, you're reminding yourself, I don't need to earn basic respect. Basic respect, common courtesy, these are normal things. This is what we should be experiencing as human beings. If it's not happening, that is a reflection on them and where they're at, and not a reflection on you. Now what I'm going to do now is go through some self-worth builders, because even with the perfect response, there is a chance that he's going to react in a particular way that sets you off a little bit or affects you a little bit. And we want to make sure that the foundations are strong enough so you can manage whatever comes your way, and that every day you're going about your life knowing that you are enough, that you are worthy of love, and so on. So the first exercise I want you to engage in is what we call the mirror exercise. So every morning and the middle of the day and evening, you're more than welcome to do it as often as you want. I want you to stand in front of the mirror and I want you to just literally look yourself in the eye and say, I am learning to love myself and I accept who I am. Or you can say, I love myself. But if you're not there yet, if you don't feel like you love yourself, if you say, I love myself, and you look yourself in the mirror and every part of your brain's like, oh, who are you kidding? Or no, there's something wrong with you or whatever, that's okay. You're allowed to acknowledge that and just quietly say to yourself, I am learning to love myself. So it's just having the intent to do that. And then identify what are some of those thoughts that are coming up that are acting as a barrier to do that. And then slowly acknowledge it, accept it, and release it. And then go back to that thought. I am learning to love myself. Secondly, the memory journal. I want you to just take some time during the day, morning, evening, whenever that suits you, and write down a memory where you really felt extremely confident, or you just felt your self-worth just feeling really, really good on that particular moment. Taking the time to reflect back on some of those moments helps you just build a bit more of that confidence inside, going, yeah, actually I've had those experiences and I am worthy of respect and love and so on. And finally, the outside voice. Connect with someone who who knows your value, who knows your worth, and ask them to tell you 5 things that they love about you and see what that does for you, because it's a beautiful thing when you hear it from an outside voice. And the idea behind all of these exercises is to value you outside of what your husband's opinions of you are. So now, moving forward, over the next 7 days, I want you to apply this particular plan. From days 1 to 2, practice pattern number 1 response and the mirror exercise. Days 3 to 4, I want you to practice the second pattern response and your memory journal. And then on days 5 to 7, use all of the different responses as well as the outside voice. Really begin to condition yourself to provide these sorts of responses and hold them. Hold that energy that you need to in order to feel really grounded and centered when you're saying these things, so that when the moment comes, you can actually say it. And I can assure you that if you maintain some consistency with this, even past the 7 days, you're going to really notice some big shifts internally. As you begin to apply the 7-day plan, some really interesting things start to happen. Because you're creating shifts within yourself and you're changing the way you communicate, he's going to notice some differences. He's going to notice some shifts, but he won't be able to identify what's actually going on. It might throw him off a little bit. So just be mindful of that. But if you are noticing it, know that you're on the right track. However, where most people struggle with this is knowing the correct sequence to do some of these activities, to know the right approach, and to ultimately feel like they're courageous enough and strong enough in order to be able to apply them. They start to question themselves, they start to doubt themselves, and that's when things fall off the rails, and then it goes back to the old patterns that have been running for a number of years sometimes. So we want to really make sure that you're approaching this in the best possible way. So if you are in a position where you're struggling a little bit, you're not sure what to do, how to say it, that you fear the potential responses from him and so on, then what I encourage you to do is in the description section below, you can click on that link which says book a call with me. Just choose a time that works for you. I'll contact you at that scheduled time. We can learn a little bit more about your circumstances, learn a little bit more about the kind of individual your husband is, be able to give you the right approach and help you to create the shifts that you need to in order to maximize the transformation that you're looking for. The stuff works. If we go deep, amazing things can truly happen. So what I recommend you do now is, dealing with narcissistic individuals can be extremely detrimental to your emotional health. So just click on this video below and I'll explain a little bit more how to go about the emotional healing through this difficult time that you're going through. Thank you so much. God bless, and I'll talk to you in the next video.